Battle through the heavens. Qing Yao's expression had turned quite ugly when he heard Elder Qi Hua's words. However, due to the other party's status, he could only clench his fists tightly regardless of how dissatisfied he was. He viciously glanced at Lu Qing. His eyes were filled with fury. Although Qing Yao knew that the situation had turned around because of Xiao Yan's appearance, he really had difficulty forming hatred toward a Tier 7 alchemist. This was because he clearly understood just how great of an ability a Tier 7 alchemist possessed. Compared to Qing Yao's ugly expression, Lu Qing's face was covered in a joyous one. He cupped his hands toward Elder Qi Hua as he smiled and said, "Thank you very much, Elder Qi Hua." Elder Qi Hua smiled and waved his hand. His eyes landed on Xiao Yan beside Lu Qing. He quickly stepped forward, cupped his hands, and smiled as he said with great politeness, "Cuckoo, may I inquire about young friend's name?" "Yan Xiao." Xiao Yan smiled and cupped his hands toward Elder Qi Hua. Young friend Yan Xiao already possesses such an achievement at his age. This is really unbelievable. May I know which great person is young friend's teacher? Elder Qi Hua laughed. Regardless of how outstanding Xiao Yan's talent was, it was unlikely for him to reach such a stage if there was no one to guide him. He is merely a mountain hermit and cannot be considered a great person. Xiao Yan laughed and pushed this question aside without making it obvious. Seeing that Xiao Yan did not wish to speak more about this topic, Elder Qi Hua hurriedly shut his mouth. He might be an elder of the Burning Flame Valley, but he was just an expert dozong. He still maintained a courteous tone to a Tier 7 alchemist. "Haha, Lu Qing, the wormhole of the Tianhuang city shall be managed by your Lu clan during the 3 years from today on. All you need to do is deliver the tribute to the Burning Flame Valley on time every year." Elder Qi Hua's eyes slid to Lu Qing as he spoke with a friendly smile. Lu Qing smiled and nodded. He was naturally aware that the reason Elder Qi Hua was being this courteous to him was due to Xiao Yan. There is already a result as to who will manage the wormhole. "Cuckoo, young friend Yan Xiao, may I know if you have the time to accompany the old me to the Burning Flame Valley?" Elder Qi Hua rubbed his hands and smiled as he asked Xiao Yan a question. His mission was to find a high-tier alchemist. Now that Xiao Yan had beaten Xing Xiu half to death, he would end up with a tragedy if Xiao Yan did not follow him to the Burning Flame Valley. "May I know why the Burning Flame Valley is searching for high-tier alchemist?" Xiao Yan finally asked after momentarily thinking. "Cuckoo, my valley chief wants to refine a high-tier medicinal pill and requires the cooperation of some high-tier alchemists. Young friend Yan Xiao, please be reassured that this matter will not be difficult. The Burning Flame Valley will reward you greatly once you succeed." Elder Qi Hua hurried said. "Refining a medicinal pill?" Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes. The strength of the valley chief of the Burning Flame Valley was likely not weaker than Feng Zunjia. A medicinal pill that he required was likely a Tier 7 one. It was not easy to refine a medicinal pill of this tier. The valley chief of the Burning Flame Valley is also an alchemist. Xiao Yan suddenly thought of something and asked with some surprise. Most of the time, a pill refinement relied on one's own strength. How could the help of outsiders have any effect? Elder Qi Hua looked at Xiao Yan with surprise when he heard this. The valley chief of the Burning Flame Valley is not an alchemist. Although he is extremely interested in alchemist, he is unable to become one due to him not meeting all the requirements. However, he is also a person with outstanding ability. With his ability to control flames, he is able to control a heavenly flame to refine some medicinal pills. However, the tier of these pills is not very high. If he wants to refine a high-tier medicinal pill, he will need other alchemists to aid him. Lu Qing by the side approached Xiao Yan and softly explained. It is likely the heavenly flame the valley chief of the burning flame valley relies on is the nine-dragon lightning flame. Currently there is still a period of time until the pill gathering is conducted. Perhaps I can take this opportunity to head to the Burning Flame Valley to obtain the remaining 2 changes of the Skyfire 3 mysterious change, Xiao Yan muttered in his heart. The Skyfire 3 mysterious change was very important to him. If he complete this secret technique, it was likely that his fighting strength would soar. Should he meet an expert like Fei Tian in the future, he would be able to fight him head-on. The interior of the pill region was filled with experts. This would be even more true during the pill gathering. Hence, Xiao Yan needed to try his best to raise his strength. Since I have already intervened, I will naturally not withdraw. Xiao Yan made up his mind in his heart before speaking to Elder Qi Hua with a smile. Elder Qi Hua sighed in relief when he heard this. The smile on his old face had also increased. With a wave of his hand, an enormous bird that was covered in flames flew over from outside of the open ground. He cupped his hands toward Xiao Yan as he smiled and said, "In that case, the old me shall wait for young friend above." Elder Qi Hua's body rose up and immediately landed on the back of the enormous bird after his voice sounded. "Xiao Yan, do you really plan to head to the Burning Flame Valley?" Lin Yan by the side hurriedly asked when he saw Elder Qi Hua leap onto the back of the enormous bird. He was aware that Xiao Yan possessed the Skyfire 3 mysterious change. If this was discovered by the Burning Flame Valley, it would likely result in some trouble. "Cuckoo, I heard that quite a number of alchemists have been invited to the Burning Flame Valley this time around. All of them possess some skills. If they can successfully help the Valley Chief of the Burning Flame Valley refine the medicinal pill, I'm sure that the reward will be extremely great. With the reputation of the Burning Flame Valley, they would not mistreat anyone." Lu Qing smiled as he gave his input. He had a good understanding of the Burning Flame Valley. Xiao Yan smiled. He was unconcerned about what kind of reward there was. It would be enough if he could obtain the completed version of the Skyfire 3 mysterious change. "Lin Yan, you should stay in Tianhuang City during this period of time. I will return once I am done. Additionally, Lu Qing, there is something that I need to trouble you with." Xiao Yan mused for a moment before speaking. "You can tell me if there is anything. I will not even frown as long as I can do it." Lu Qin patted his chest and spoke in an unrestrained manner. "Help me investigate any information related to a lady called the Little Fairy Doctor in the Middle Region during this period of time." Xiao Yan slowly said. "Additionally, help me investigate a clan. There is a girl called Xian Lan in it." "The Little Fairy Doctor?" Lu Qin fondled his chin and nodded. He said, "I have never heard of this name. However, I will send someone to the Pill region to investigate. As for that girl called Xian Lan, it will be a little difficult to investigate. From the way I see it, this should not be her surname. There are a countless number of various-sized clans in the Middle region. Attempting to find her clan is no different than finding a needle in a haystack. Her clan seems to have once entered the Pill Tower Elder's seat. However, their name should have been removed by now." Xiao Yan said. "Oh." Lu Qing's expression changed a little when he heard this. The clans that could enter the Pill Tower's elder seats were no ordinary factions. Even if its name had been removed, its strength would definitely be something that their Lu clan would not be able to compare with. Now the scope of the search has been greatly reduced. "All right, leave this matter to me. I will settle this matter by the time you return." Lu Qin mused for a moment before replying with a grin. Xiao Yan nodded. He would save himself the trouble of randomly roaming around like a headless housefly. Xiao Yan chatted with the other two after giving appropriate instructions. When the fiery red, enormous bird in the sky emitted a sharp cry, Xiao Yan finally cupped his hands to Lu Qing and Lin Yan. His toes pressed on the ground as his body leaped into the sky. Lin Yan hurriedly spoke when he saw Xiao Yan move, "Be careful." Xiao Yan smiled and nodded to Lin Yan. His body immediately moved and he steadily landed on the back of the enormous bird. "Haha, is young friend Yan Xiao ready?" Elder Qi hurriedly spoke with a smile when he saw Xiao Yan come up. Xiao Yan slightly smiled. He cupped his hands to Elder Qi and said, "Elder Qi, please lead the way." Elder Qi grinned, gave polite reply, and waved his hand. The enormous bird under his feet let out a sharp cry. It flapped its enormous wings as it swiftly flew toward the northern sky in front of many envious gazes while bringing about a hot, wild wind. The Burning Flame Valley was situated in the Roasting Fire Mountain Range in the southwestern part of the Middle Region. This mountain range was completely formed by hot volcanoes. At a glance, it was a monotonous crimson color. Some of the volcano's peaks emitted a dense white smoke that curled and rose. Occasionally, there would be some lava seeping out of them. The Roasting Fire Mountain Range was not far from Tianhuang City. The journey took less than half a day. Moreover, the flying speed of the enormous bird that Elder Qi used was quite fast. Hence, Xiao Yan could vaguely sense his surroundings gradually fill with natural energy after a short 4 hours. This kind of fullness was vaguely mixed with some violence. Xiao Yan's eyes looked into the distance as he stood on the back of the enormous bird. He could only see a fiery red line at the edge of his sight. This fiery red line was quite imposing, and one was unable to see the end with a glance. "Cuckoo, young friend Yan Xiao. This is the Roasting Fire Mountain Range. The headquarters of the Burning Flame Valley is located within." Elder Qi smiled to Xiao Yan as he continued, "The Roasting Fire Mountain Range is filled with fire affinity energy. However, due to the volcanoes erupting all year round, this energy contains some violence within it. If one wishes to absorb it, one would need to expel the violence within. Otherwise, one's mind would be affected after training for a long time." Xiao Yan smiled and nodded. Although Xiao Yan did not need to be afraid of this violent energy due to the heavenly flames protecting him, this was mentioned with good intention by the other party. Additionally, there are many magical beasts within the Roasting Fire Mountain Range that are even more wild, violent and fierce compared to other places. Moreover, this Roasting Fire Mountain Range is vast and unending. Even my Burning Flame Valley has not investigated some of the places within it. Hence, young friend Yan Xiao should be careful if you walk around by yourself. "Cuckoo, thank you for your reminder, Elder Qi." Elder Qi waved his hand in an unconcerned manner. He swung his sleeves and the fiery red, enormous bird under their feet increased its speed. Immediately, it transformed into a fire glow that rushed into the continuous mountain range. The temperature had also significantly risen after having entered the Roasting Fire Mountain Range. However, the temperature was nothing to Xiao Yan or Elder Qi. Hence, neither one of them was overly concerned. Elder Qi's eyes swept over the mountain range. His mouth immediately emitted a whistle. The fiery red, enormous bird gradually reduced its speed. A moment later, it slowly descended and landed at the foot of a bright red mountain. Xiao Yan's eyes drifted after he leaped down from the back of the bird. There were two extremely majestic bright red mountains in front of him. These two large mountains were leaning close to each other. A meandering stone staircase curled its way up the mountain. Xiao Yan's eyes paused on a spot not far in front of the stone stairs. Surprise immediately flashed through his eyes. The space there was vaguely emitting a shocking spatial ripple. Clearly, there was a hidden space behind it. "Cuckoo, young friend Yan Xiao, follow me." Elder Qi smiled. He took the lead to climb up the stone stairs. Xiao Yan followed close behind as his eyes slowly swept around. His heart felt a slight caution. What a firm spatial wall. Xiao Yan shook his hand. Shock flashed across his eyes as he spoke. Cuckoo, this spatial wall has been toughened by the valley chiefs of my burning flame valley over the generations. It is able to block the attack of an elite Dou Zun. An ordinary Dou Zong will not be able to break it. Elder Qi Hua laughed. A spatial wall that can block the attack of an elite Dou Zun. Xiao Yan involuntarily clicked his tongue when he heard this. It was indeed worthy of being the burning flame valley. Such a foundation was something that other ordinary factions could not compare with. Elder Qi Hua laughed. He took out a fiery red jade token from his storage ring and placed it on the spatial wall. A strange ripple spread, and one could see the spatial wall automatically parting in a slow fashion. Young friend Yan Xiao, please. Elder Qi Hua smiled to Xiao Yan. After which, he took the lead to step in. His body disappeared in a strange fashion after having stepped through the spatial wall. Xiao Yan hesitated for a moment. His footsteps moved and he slowly walked into the spatial crack. Following his entry into the spatial crack, the place in front of him suddenly brightened. He habitually shut his eyes before immediately opening them in a slow manner. The shock in his eyes immediately became dense, creating one's own realm. It is indeed worthy of being one of the three great valleys. Even someone like Xiao Yan could not help but exclaim when he saw this scenery that was completely different from the common world outside. Cuckoo, this cannot be considered creating a realm. That ability is something that only a Dou Shen class existence is capable of performing. However, after being built by generations of chiefs from my burning flame valley, this place could indeed be considered a utopia among the volcano world. Elder Qi Hua waved his hand. However, there was a pride between his brows. The work involved in building such a large valley in this volcano world was worthy of being called huge. Xiao Yan grinned. His hand grabbed at the empty air in front of him. The fire affinity energy of this place was still as dense as the outside world. However, the violence within it had already disappeared. Clearly, it had been purified. Raising his head, Xiao Yan glanced at the sky and vaguely felt that there was a distortion to it. Obviously, this entire burning flame valley was covered within a layer of distorted space. This method was similar to the inner academy. However, it was clear that the spatial barrier was far stronger than that of the inner academy. Xiao Yan let out a surprised sigh within his heart. Numerous sounds of rushing suddenly appeared around the surrounding forest of the stone stairs. Over a dozen agile figures rushed over. Immediately, they landed around the stone stairs. Only after their eyes landed on Elder Qi Hua did they reduce the caution on their faces. All of them then bowed respectfully to him. Young friend Yan Xiao, please follow me. Elder Qi Hua smiled to Xiao Yan. After which, his body moved. His feet stepped onto empty air as he flew toward the deep regions of the valley. Behind him, Xiao Yan also stepped onto the air and followed close behind. All of the Burning Flame Valley's disciples revealed a shocked expression in their eyes when they saw this. That person is actually a Dou Zong. Why is he so young? It should be some senior who purposefully turned himself into this manner. I heard that some medicinal pills possess a beautifying effect. This should be it. If this is his actual age, would he not be comparable to Miss Huier? That's right, just one abnormal person like Miss Huier is sufficient. It would be too much of a blow if there are more of them. Xiao Yan did not hear the private conversations between these people. He followed Elder Qi Hua closely. They flew for a couple of minutes before gradually descending. Finally, they landed in front of a large, fiery red hall. At this moment, there were quite a number of Burning Flame Valley's disciples guarding the fiery red, large hall. Their cautious eyes repeatedly swept all over the place. It seems that some other alchemist grandmasters have arrived, Elder Qi muttered as he looked at the tightly guarded, large hall. What does your valley chief want to refine? Is there a need for so many alchemists? Xiao Yan knit his brows and asked. Cuckoo, there is no need for so many. Instead, the intention is to find one or two suitable ones among these alchemists. Of course, even if one is not selected, the Burning Flame Valley will still prepare a big gift. Young friend Yan Xiao need not be worried. Elder Qi smiled as he explained. There is a need for selection. Ugh, I'll wait and see. Xiao Yan helplessly shook his head. At this moment, he could not simply turn around and leave. All he could do was sigh and nod his head. Elder Qi let out an awkward smile when he saw Xiao Yan nod. After which, he hurriedly led the way in front. Behind him, Xiao Yan sighed as he looked at the grand, fiery red hall. He swiftly followed. Since he had already arrived at this Burning Flame Valley, he would obtain the Skyfire 3 mysterious change regardless of what happened. Xiao Yan followed behind Elder Qi and smoothly passed through the tight defenses outside of the large hall. After which, they gently pushed open the door of the hall. Creak. At this moment, there were around 10 figures seated inside the large hall. Most of them were wearing alchemist robes. From their appearances, it was obvious that they were quite old. Their faces were indifferent. None of them felt constrained because this place was the headquarters of the Burning Flame Valley. There was a skinny, red-haired, old man in simple linen clothes seated in the leader's seat in the hall. The old man's face was filled with smiles. However, the hearts of everyone seated were clearly aware of this old man's great status within this middle region. A red-clothed lady was standing prettily by the side of the red-haired, old man. Her delicate and narrow waist was wrapped by a dark red, long belt that accentuated her waist so that it appeared even more alluring. The appearance of this lady was quite extraordinary. However, there was a heroic demeanor being emitted from her thin eyebrows. This, along with her fiery red outfit, gave her a valiant appearance, giving her an unusual charm. The eyes of everyone in the hall shot over when they heard the noise from the opening of the door that led into the hall, especially when Elder Qi mentioned the arrival of an alchemist grandmaster. Quite a number of people shot their eyes over with interest. Haha, Qi, you are the last to finish your task this time around, the red-haired, old man smiled at Elder Qi. After which, he asked, why aren't you inviting the grandmaster in? Are you trying to let others say that our Burning Flame Valley has bad hospitality? Elder Qi hurriedly nodded upon hearing the red-haired, old man's words. He turned his head, faced the exterior of the hall and said, young friend Yan Xiao, please enter. Yan Xiao. The 10+ alchemist in the hall, who possessed some reputation within the middle region, frowned slightly when they heard the manner of address by Elder Qi. They had never heard of an alchemist grandmaster named Yan Xiao appearing in the middle region. Yan Xiao greets Valley Chief. Xiao Yan was unconcerned with these unusual looks. His eyes jumped to the red-haired, old man in the leader's seat in the hall. Xiao Yan had vaguely sensed a faint pressure when he entered the hall. The source of this pressure originated from this skinny, old man who did not appear frightening. The red-haired, old man was similarly startled when he saw Xiao Yan. However, he hid his emotions very well and did not expose them in any way. His eyes slowly swept over Xiao Yan. Following this, the surprise within his eyes also became more dense. Haha, young friend is too polite. The old Mimi is called Tang Zhen. It is unexpected that young friend has already reached the Dou Zone class at such a young age. This talent is really rare. The red-haired, old man laughed. The red-clothed lady beside Tang Zhen was also using strange eyes to look at Xiao Yan. There was a hint of doubt within her eyes. Being the most outstanding person from the younger generation in the Burning Flame Valley, she clearly understood just how difficult it was to reach the Dou Zone class at such an age. Moreover, the thing that caused her to feel some disbelief was that Xiao Yan's age seemed to be even younger than her. Valley Chief Tang has overpraised me. It is just that my luck is a little more than an ordinary person. Xiao Yan's expression did not change, but his heart involuntarily felt some surprise. This person was indeed worthy of being the chief of the Burning Flame Valley. He was able to tell Xiao Yan's strength with just a glance. While this thought was lingering in Xiao Yan's heart, his gaze also swept over Tang Zhen on the leader's seat without being obvious. He was a little shocked to discover that he was unable to probe the other person's aura. He is able to hide his aura so perfectly. The strength of this Tang Zhen is likely much greater than even Lei Zunjie from the Wind Lightning Pavilion. Being able to possess such luck is also considered an ability. However, what I need today is not a Dou Zone, but a true alchemist grandmaster. Elder Qi Hua, have you really not brought the wrong person? An old man who was wearing an alchemist robe by the side glanced at Xiao Yan as he indifferently talked down. An alchemist grandmaster was a form of address that possessed significant weight in the Central Plains. Moreover, the requirements to obtain this title were quite harsh. The first condition was that one must be able to refine a Tier 6 or even a Tier 7 medicinal pill alone. Of course, if one could refine a Tier 8 medicinal pill, one could already be called an alchemist guru. Elder Qi Hua slightly frowned upon hearing this old fellow's words. He immediately said with a smile, "Grandmaster Mo, please rest assured that the old me still possesses a little eyesight. This young friend Yan Xiao does indeed reach the requirements stated by the valley chief." The one called Elder Mo could only let out a soft snort when he heard this. His eyes glanced at Xiao Yan before he ceased speaking. Haha, if it is really as Elder Qi Hua has mentioned, this young friend Yan Zhao's talent is likely much greater than even my daughter's talent. It is not a simple matter to achieve greatness in alchemist skill while reaching the Dou Zone class at the same time. Tang Ying appeared to have not heard the doubt that Grandmaster Mo felt toward Xiao Yan as he spoke with a smile. Jumping to a quick conclusion by just hearing what someone says. "Father, I think you are becoming muddled in your old age." The red-clothed lady by the side curled her lips and coldly snorted. Her pretty eyes swept over Xiao Yan while her snow-white chin was lifted. There was a provocation within her eyes. She had never met an opponent among the same generation who was comparable to her in all these years. Xiao Yan's appearance had caused her, who possessed a competitive spirit, to feel a great interest. Xiao Yan merely smiled in the face of the provocation in the red-clothed lady's eyes. He could sense that this lady did not have any ill intention. She was merely a little dissatisfied by Tang Zhen's words earlier. "Young friend Yan Xiao, please find a seat." Tang Ying smiled and directed Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan nodded with a grin. After which, he was led to a seat in the large hall by Elder Qi Hua beside him. That Grandmaster Mo from earlier is a Tier 6 alchemist. He is able to refine a medicinal pill at the peak of the Tier 6 level. If he is given a couple more years, it is likely that he will reach Tier 7. That person's mouth is a little nasty. Just act like you did not hear his words. Elder Qi Hua softly explained to Xiao Yan after he had sat down. Xiao Yan lowered his chin without leaving a trace when he heard this. He could sense that the alchemists invited here were all renowned people with the exception being himself. However, with young friend Yan Zhao's skill, you need not pay any attention to this old fellow. All you need to do is pay attention to two people among those seated. They are the two people seated on the left and right of the valley chief. Xiao Yan's heart moved when he heard Elder Qi Hua's words. He slid his eyes over. There were two old men who had their eyes shut on both sides of Tangzhen. Their auras were being suppressed, but Xiao Yan was still vaguely able to sense the majestic spiritual strength that permeated the area beside these two people. Tier 7 Alchemists. Xiao Yan's eyes narrowed slightly. His finger gently tapped his knee. This should be his first time seeing a Tier 7 alchemist during all these years. These two people enjoy a great reputation within the Middle region. One reason is that they possess an extremely great alchemist skill, while the other is that these two are external elders of the Pill Tower. Even the valley chief is extremely courteous to them. Elder Qi Hua softly explained more. Xiao Yan's heart was slightly shaken. External elders of the Pill Tower. This title was indeed pretty shocking. Haha, since everyone has arrived, the old me shall talk a little about this matter at hand. Tang Ying in the leader's seat softly coughed. His eyes swept over the entire hall as he said, I think that everyone is aware about some of it. The old me wants to refine a medicinal pill. This medicinal pill is a Tier 7 high-grade medicinal pill. The expressions of the 10+ alchemist grandmasters in the large hall changed slightly upon hearing this. A Tier 7 medicinal pill was considered quite high even for these people seated here. When Tang Ying spoke, the two external elders of the Pill Tower also slowly opened their shut eyes. They glanced at the former and said, Tier 7 high-grade medicinal pill. A medicinal pill of this tier is something that even the both of us cannot refine. Haha, you can leave this matter to the old me. Although the old me is not an alchemist, there are some abilities of mine that all of you do not possess. Tang Zhen smiled and said, all I need are two alchemists who can resist my 9-dragon lightning flame. Upon saying this, Tang Zhen gently clenched his hand. One could hear a puff sound as a silver-colored flame slowly rose from his hand. While the flame rose, one could vaguely see 9 silver-colored fire dragons twisting within the flame. This is the 9-dragon lightning flame. Xiao Yan's eyes slightly narrowed when he saw the cluster of silver-colored flames. Everyone, please summon your spiritual strength. If you are able to endure the grilling of this 9-dragon lightning flame of mine, you will have reached the qualifying standard. Tang Zhen smiled as he instructed. The faces of quite a number of alchemists in the large hall twitched when they heard this.